on to start meditating and understanding this whole universal mind and the powers that be. And for me, that is God, like all in one, right? And God is to you what God is to you. Like to me, it's both. It's kind of like, yes, is there this being in streets of gold and all these things up there, and when you die, you go to heaven or hell? Maybe. Right. I don't know. But what I do know is that with faith and with the power of the universe and with like understanding and getting deep into like the spirituality that I have, my life has just gotten better.
Imagine having direct access to someone who's navigated life's toughest terrains and come out stronger. Someone who's been there, done that, and can guide you with empathy, experience, and honesty. This isn't just advice. It's a lifeline, a strategy session, a chance to learn from my journey so you can accelerate yours. Without the ability to be self-aware and introspective, the ability for you to get to where you want to go, nearly impossible.
Well, hey everyone, welcome back to the David Guttman podcast. I have a really interesting guest here today, Adam Williams. He's the founder and CEO of Elevest Capital, but you've done a lot more than that. So why don't, if you don't mind, just start through, again, long list of accolades, I'm sure, but maybe just the high points, and then love to dive into some of the things we were just talking about before we got on camera.
Sure. Yeah, and thank you, Dave. I appreciate you having me out, and welcome to Scottsdale. It's awesome out here.
You.
So glad you get to enjoy it. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small town in Washington State, not DC, Washington State, everybody asks, right next to Portland, Oregon. And I always had an affinity for entrepreneurialism, and my father was an entrepreneur, the only one in my entire family. He was also into real estate. He owned some very small apartment buildings and some single family residences. And so I remember early on as a young boy, helping him clean these things out, and the cockroaches would scatter out of the furniture, and going to collect rents at 2 a.m. because that's when the tenant had the check. And but my dad was always like super positive and always just never a negative thought, never a negative bone. I said, man, I want to be more like this guy, because small town, people kind of get that, and it's really cloudy in Washington, and there's just a lot of like depression and stuff there. And so the rest of my family, although loved them, great people, they had a different mindset than my father. And so I tried to just spend more time with him. But anyways, got that bug early on and started my first company when I was 18 years old, a detail shop, detailing cars, and just got the affinity for building businesses and just started building businesses, and then met a guy and got the real estate bug in my mid-20s, and never looked back, man. And I ended up here in Scottsdale on a whim. I was working with a guy, and he moved out here, and he called me up and he said, hey, Adam, you got to come check out Scottsdale. You're not going to believe this place, because we were in Portland, Oregon at the time. Right. And I said, Arizona, like there's tumbleweeds and cactuses and like coyotes.
Isn't it 200 degrees in the summer, right?
Yeah, I'm like, what is this place? So I hopped on a plane reluctantly and came out to see him, and I got here and my mind was blown. I said sunshine and like nice people, and it's warm and like everybody's happy. I said, what the heck? So I literally stayed with him for about a week, flew home, packed everything I owned in my car at the time, drove out here by myself, no family, no girlfriend in tow, no nothing,
right.
And never looked back. That was 25 years ago. Wow. So. And just have met the most amazing people out here. I met my wife out here. I just wouldn't be where I am today without this town and the people in this town and all those things. So I'm very grateful of the trajectory in my life. I just turned 47 years old, and I don't have any regrets. I mean, I've made a tremendous amount of mistakes like we all have. I've failed 10 times more than I've ever succeeded, but I love my life, and I've designed it that way.
Talk about your dad a little bit. So what made him different, that he was the sort of the positive shining light, and versus everyone else? I had a grandmother, my paternal grandmother, never heard her utter an unkind word about another human being.
Yeah.
I've never met anyone else in my entire life that's true about. It was hard to believe. It sounds like your dad was similar. Like, what made him wired that way, if you have any concept of that?
I've thought about this a lot. It's a great question, and I wish I knew the answer. And I've asked him a few times. My dad, bless his soul, is still alive. He had a pretty major stroke a few years back, his second stroke, and so he's paralyzed and he's in a wheelchair now. But he's still cracking jokes and he's still got a big smile on his face. And every time I talk to him, he's still positive as can be. And I've always wondered that because we all have bad days, we all have bad times, and I'm sure he's had his share as well. We all get pissed off at people in the world once in a while. Yeah. It's natural, right? Yeah. We're humans. And I never saw him mad. I never saw him upset. And when I have asked him that question a few times throughout the years, he's just said, what do I have to be upset about? Like, the world's a beautiful place, and the more I smile, the more it smiles back at me. And I'm like, dude, I love that. And on the opposite end of that, my mom, who is gone, rest her soul, she was the most amazing woman, would give you the shirt off her back, and I had an amazing relationship with my mother, but she was the opposite. She was always very upset and a lot of depression issues and so forth. So I think it was really cool for me to see both sides. Her and my dad separated when I was 7 years old, but to live in both homes and see both sides, and I was able to choose where I wanted. And I have a saying to this day, I say it all the time: no bad seeds. I don't allow people to plant bad seeds in my mind because they'll sprout and they'll grow and no negativity. I just don't allow it. So I'm not flawless in that regard. Like my father pretty much has been all his life, at least from what I've seen, but I try to do the best I can. And it really is because of him, I believe.
It's funny, our experiences do parallel quite a bit. My folks didn't split up till I went to college. They might as well have. Yeah. I think I was begging them since I was around 7th grade, like, you guys really shouldn't be together. But it was interesting. I had the same experience, which is I would be able to see the way my mom saw the world and the way my dad saw the world, and I could pick and choose. I'm like, I want to take those things. My mom was a social worker, so I think some of my interpersonal skills and stuff like that came from my mom. My dad was an entrepreneur, and so some things came from him. And I, I'm remarried now, but my first wife, I got divorced when my daughter was 1. And while there's certainly plenty of downside to that, one of the points of upside is when you're co-parenting and you're married, you kind of have to be on the same page to a large extent, right?
100%.
When you're divorced, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So I parented in a completely different, style than my ex-wife did, and my daughter got to pick and choose, even in a more demonstrative way than I was able to, because they were separate households.
Yeah.
And I underestimated the impact of that. So that's interesting.
I think there's a lot of lessons to take away from that that have directly impacted me. And now that I have my own children, and we have a split household, my wife and I are both divorced. I was married to my son's mother for 10 years, and she was married to her daughter's father for, I think, 6 or 7 years. And we talk about it all the time, to where, they live fine lives, but different than us, right? And they have different values and different conversations in their household. I mean, I'm not there, I'm not a fly on the wall, but it's cool, I think, for the kids, and valuable for them to get to live and see both sides and then get to choose. I know my mom, and again, love her to death, had a great relationship with her, but she was very woe is me, blame the world, very kind lady, but would hold on to things for 40 years. And my dad, just complete opposite. He didn't remember something that happened 40 minutes ago. Like, he was just like, so what, now what? Let's go.
Like Dory the Goldfish, right? Or
yeah.
Whatever. So, how did your parents get along?
No, similar again to you. From as young as I can remember, which is about 3, them just fighting brutally, to the point of where my mom, again, love her, sorry mom, but absolutely crazy. And so my dad just trying to hold her at bay and never being mean to her, and now she would have told a different story, but I never once saw him yell at her, lay a hand on her, do anything wrong to her, just trying to hold her at bay. And to the point of where, one story in particular, my dad always had, guns in the house, family protection, this is back, whatever. And they were always loaded. I remember him always telling me, never keep a gun in your dresser drawer unless it's loaded, because if you need it in the middle of the night, somebody comes in your house, unloaded gun's not going to do you much good.
Right.
And so I knew he always had loaded guns in the house, even from a young boy. But 3 or 4 years old, about 4 years old, I remember them yelling and screaming and fighting. And I come out of my bedroom, it's probably 1 a.m, and my mom literally has a gun pointed in my dad's face.
Oh my God.
And my dad said, I've never hurt you, but if you don't take that gun out of my face, I'm afraid I'm going to have to put you down. And my mom pulled the trigger. Holy
shit.
The gun went click. And my dad put her down on the ground. And that's the only time I ever saw him. I'm getting chills. That's the only time I ever saw him touch my mom. He didn't beat her up.
Right,
he
right.
didn't lay a hand on her, but he grabbed her by the throat and he told her and he looked her in the face and he said, I'll kill you if you ever try to harm me again. And I talked to him years later about it. I was a little boy, right? So I just went in my room like, oh my God, my parents are fighting again. But I talked to him years later as an adult, and he said, yeah, he goes, I had a feeling it was getting so bad, and I unloaded all the guns in the house.
Wow.
And he just wouldn't be here today. So that was, talk about parents fighting, it just went beyond
Okay,
that.
yeah, you just passed me like by about a galaxy.
And for me, though, I don't look back on that, Dave, as like something bad that happened to me at all. I look at it as a blessing because our home is very calm. My wife and I don't raise our voice to each other.
Right.
We don't argue. We don't, look, if you're not happy, make changes.
Yeah.
And like you said, you told your parents, man, you guys should have, are you sure this is working out? Like, I wish my parents would have broke up right after they had me.
Yeah, it's funny things that, because I'll tell the story and it's true. Like, I never drank alcohol till I was 35 because I helped my mom detox from alcohol when she was 9. And again, I wasn't aware of it at 9, but around 11 or 12 I was, and I just thought she was really sick. And so when peer pressure came a calling, there was no amount of peer pressure that was going to get me to drink because I thought maybe it's genetic and I didn't want to be an alcoholic too. People are like, weren't you traumatized? I'm like, that was a wonderful gift that she gave me in a weird way, because it taught me that you don't always have to fold to peer pressure. And once I didn't fold to peer pressure that first time, it was pretty easy from that point forward. So you got to find the good in things.
You do. And I think you have a choice, right? There are certain people that look at a situation like that and they find the good in it. And there are other people that live with that for 30 years and say, well, mom was an alcoholic, so my life's ruined.
Survivor of an alcoholic.
Yeah, you choose path A or path B. We have these conversations with our kids all the time.
Yeah.
It's your choice.
So now, how is that? So as you mentioned, so you have 2 children with your now current wife, but she has one from a prior marriage, and so do you.
Yeah.
How does that? Do they get along? Do they interact much? How does the co-parenting on that work? That sounds like it could be challenging.
The kids or the parents and us?
Both, actually.
Oh, yeah. The kids are best friends. So
Oh,
it's
great.
really cool because my son, James, is 15 and our daughter, Liliana, is 7. And so they don't have a boy and a girl. So they're years enough apart to where they're still in the same house together and they get along together, and he plays with her and does crafts with her and has fun with her. But there's no conflict of interest, right? They're not fighting over the prize at the bottom of the cereal box.
Right.
So they're great. They're amazing. I wouldn't change anything in the world. I feel extremely blessed to have both of them and the relationship that they have. As far as the co-parents, look, nothing's perfect, right? Like, we have a very different way that we think about things, and we've had our ups and downs, but I think we do a pretty darn good job. And we've navigated some rough waters over the years, but we just learn from it. And I'm grateful that they're receptive to learning, even though once in a while we'll still like, nah, I don't agree with you on that. Okay, cool. Well, let's get over it because we're all adults, right? And it's really what's best for the kids. And as common sense as that sounds, it's not always easy, right? So, but you navigate those waters, or you go at each other's throats all the time. And what does that do? That doesn't do good for you. That's an unnecessary stress.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so, love talking about the personal stuff, but I do want to talk about not just your professional success and kind of how you got there, and maybe because what I try to do in my podcast is I really am trying to tease out, for those people that have taken maybe a little bit less traditional path, you're about a decade younger than me, so it was still largely true for you. When I was growing up, traditional paths were kind of the 95% of the people that were successful took a more traditional path.
right.
There were no YouTubers, there were no Instagram, that wasn't a thing, right?
Right.
And, there wasn't even cell phones or texting or any of that. So maybe talk a little bit about, the path that you took to success, how you think about success, how you think about risk, things like that.
Yeah, good question. I bonked my head a lot. I knew early on in life, very early on as a teenager, that I did not want to run the traditional path of, graduate high school, go to college, get a good job, and work for 40, 50 years to build somebody else's dream, and then, flow off into retirement, go sit on a beach. Like, just wasn't my jam. And the fact that most people do that, thank God, because we wouldn't have the people in our lives that help make the world go around, right? But for me, I just wanted more. And it really wasn't ever about money. I mean, money, I think you have to have, right? That creates the freedoms. And if you don't have money, you're really stressed out. So, but it wasn't about that. It was freedom of time. For me, I wanted to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, with who I wanted to do it, without anybody giving me permission to leave the office or go to lunch or, any of those things. And I did get the bug from my dad, but he did it in a very different manner. I mean, he ran a very grimy little construction business. I remember getting up with him at 4 a.m. and going into the office, and everybody was paid under the table and getting $20 to fill the gas tank. He ran like a roofing and construction company, and then he did his real estate on the side. But I knew I didn't want that either. I wanted to build a business, right? I wanted to build a real business in a real office with real employees, doing real good. And so I started hunting early on, and I just started kind of figuring it out. And the ideas evolve as you get older, right? So first it was the detail shop, and I started the detail shop, and I failed miserably at it because the guy down the street had been doing it way longer, giving better prices, and had all the clients. So did that for about a year, probably lost some money and some time, but I learned a lot from it. And then I fumbled around with a few different business ideas. I went into the healthcare space for a while, and like nutrition supplements because I was really into working out in the gym. I haven't been all my life. None of that worked out for me. And then when I was in my mid-20s, I got invited to a Halloween party. And I lived in Portland, Oregon at the time with my wife. And we went to visit a friend of mine that invited us to this Halloween party. And I never forget, we pulled up to the house. And this house was the biggest house I'd ever seen. It was, pretty new. I think it had just been built like that year, and it wrapped around the whole side of the mountain. And I'm like, oh my God, like the guy's name was Kip. I'm like, what the heck does Kip do? Right? Like, wow. Like he invited us, he was a friend, but I didn't know him super well. So we go up and ring the doorbell, and he answers the door. And he's like, hey, come on in. And everybody, everybody's in there, whatever. And I was like, is this your house? He's like, no, I'm just renting a room from this guy, or I just lived here with this guy or whatever, and his wife. And I'm like, well, who is this guy? I want to meet him. So he introduces me to the guy. His name's Jeremy. And I basically was like, beautiful home. Thank you so much for the invite. I need to know what you do and how you do it and how I can get involved. And I'm probably 24 at the time. Right. I'm guessing 23, somewhere around there. And he's like, man, thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. He's like, I'm in real estate. I own a mortgage company. But he's like, let's have fun tonight. And then why don't you come to my office on Monday? Here's my number. And he gave me his card. Monday morning, I couldn't wait to call him. Called him up. Went over to his mortgage office. It was right there in Portland, Hillsborough, I think, whatever. Anyways, and I walk in, and he greets me, and we sit down, start chatting, and I said, so you got all this from a mortgage? The kid was 18 years old. So he's younger than me by 6, 7 years.
What?
5, 6, 7 years. Yeah, 18 years old. I said, well, there's no way that he goes, no, this isn't how I make my real money. He said, I invest in real estate. And I was like, okay, tell me more about this, because I had known about real estate from my father, but I didn't really, how do you get involved? Who do you trust? How do you get started? All these things. So he's like, we own the mortgage company, so we do all the loans, but we also help people that are going into like Liz Pendants, notice of default, foreclosure, things like that are in trouble that need our help to like restructure a loan or those things. I said, okay, awesome. Like, what can I do? How can I get involved? And I was running a marketing company at the time, like direct mail. We were doing some television commercial stuff for other companies. And he said, well, what are you good at? And I said, well, I'm good at marketing. Like, I know how to cold call. I know how to do direct mail, all this stuff. He said, okay. And he printed out this stack of papers, probably an inch thick. And every one of them had maybe 100 names, numbers, addresses on it. And these were the current notice of defaults in the area. He hands me the stack of papers. He says, go home. I want you to call every number on this list, and he gave me a little script, and I want you to book appointments for him to talk to me, or I'll go meet him at their home in person, and everything I sell, I'll give you a commission on. All right, easy enough. So I went home, started calling these numbers. Probably about a week, I made no less than 1,000 phone calls. I probably called through the entire stack maybe 3-4 times. And the only people I got on the phone either told me to, pound sand, don't call again, hang up, whatever. I didn't get one person that was interested in what I had to say. I thought to myself, man, there's got to be a better way at this thing. I'm not giving up. This kid is obviously, doing something right. So I went, and I was pretty broke at the time. My wife and I were struggling. I wasn't making any money. And I went and spent, I'll never forget, our last it was like $350 that we had in cash on stamps and envelopes, like a roll of the old school stamps, not the ones I think you even had to lick them back then. And went to Home Depot and got the big boxes of envelopes and paper. And I went home and I created this flyer. It was like a 1-page, you're in trouble. This is what we can do for you, blah, blah, blah. And I sat there and I hand stamped every one of these and hand wrote the address on them and just went down the entire list until I ran out of stamps and money. And mailed those off. And I never forget, I tell my wife at the time what I did. And she's like, are you kidding me? You spent our last $300 on freaking stamps? Are you out of your mind? Like, we don't even know how we're going to put groceries in the fridge. I was like, you got to trust me. There's something here. Like, and I didn't know. I had no clue what I was doing. I got a few phone calls and I got one deal that paid me $9,000. And that was more money, Dave, than I had seen in, I mean, maybe all of my working efforts at that time. $9,000. And he handed me that cashier's check, a few weeks later. And I was like, are you kidding me? I said, okay, I think I can do this. So I made a deal with that guy that I would do all of the marketing for him and he would process the transaction and handle the real estate piece because I knew nothing about it at the time. And I would get 25% of everything I brought to the table and he would keep 75%. And in 3 years, just under 3 years, we did 252 single family residences together.
Wow.
And I had opened a 70-seat call center in Orange County, California. I had built a massive marketing machine behind this thing. And it was the first time in my life I saw real success. And it was thankful to meeting the right person at the time, kind of being in the right place at the right time and asking the right question and being open to opportunity. But also it was thankful to real estate. Like, and this was when I went back, I was like, my dad was in real estate. He did pretty well. I remember, we had food on the table. We went on vacations. We did, and then now I'm making 40, 50 grand a month over month without like any question as a mid-20s. Right. And so with that, I found some success, but that was back in 04, 5, 6, 7. And we all know, if you lived through that era, what happened, in late 07, early 08. And I never forget, I was down in the call center in Orange County, California, because I was running the marketing piece and we had 70 people in there dialing. And so I was down there and we had 31 deals on the board and we had old school whiteboards, 31 deals, all in escrow, ready to close. I mean, we were cranking. And I got a call from my partner and I answered the phone and he's like, have you seen the news? And I said, what are you talking about? I don't really watch the news. I'm busy down here, right? He goes, our business is done. It's over. We can't get loans done anymore. The banks are shutting down. And I said, what? He goes, yeah, turn on the news. I turned on the news. Wow. I'm like, are you kidding me? Literally not one of those deals that we had on the board closed. They all fell out of escrow. Right. Banks tightened up. And I was in awe. I never forget, for like 2 or 3 days, I was like, what do I do? I have this massive staff, massive overhead, all these things. I was living high on the hog. I thought the money was never going to run out. But what's interesting is you get, if depending on how your mind works, you get real creative and you start to think that back to that, so what, now what, And so I already knew that I wanted to get out of the single family space because we'd done a little over 250 of these things. And I knew I couldn't really scale it. If I wanted to build a real business around it, this was pretty like, go, go, go. You're on a treadmill all the time. And in your mid-20s, you can do that. You don't want to do that forever. So I had started studying multifamily real estate about a year prior. And I actually paid 20 grand to go to like a full year of education and learn from all the greats. Not one of these little guru weekend programs you do now. Right. This was a full year. I went to school to learn this stuff. All the ins and outs of, the taxes behind it and NOI and cap rates and how to force appreciation and how multifamily real estate apartment buildings are like running a business where single family is more, it's kind of like, more emotional and so forth. And so I knew I was going to go into multifamily anyways. And the plan was to phase out of the single family over the next couple of years. But when the banks all closed up shop in a day, pretty much, and we couldn't get loans done on a $200,000 loan anymore, I was like, how am I going to get a loan done on a $20 million building, right? It's just never going to happen. Right. So we turned the call center into just a marketing machine for other companies, Dish Network, DirecTV, Solar, all the things that everybody was doing. And that was supposed to last about 2 years. But I look back and 15 years went by. And I'm like, whoa, we were just going to let like the banks come back, and the real estate market come back and just get on with the plan. But so I took a hiatus from real estate for quite a few years. And then over the last few years, I really wanted to get back in, and that's what I've done. And we founded the current company that we own, Elevest Capital. But yeah, that's my journey, and I did build some other businesses in between. None of them ever really worked out. My North Star was always real estate. So
talk about building a team, how you think about finding talent, rewarding talent, motivating talent. Because obviously, we all know if you've been a successful entrepreneur, no one's an island. Right. The team has to get you there. Talk about that a little bit.
It's critical. I mean, I was always other than the call center, which I think is a lot different because that's just a revolving door. I mean, I think our HR team was bigger than the call team, right?
Right. I
and not
ran
to
a call
speak-
center business for 5 years.
Yeah,
actually,
not to speak negative about anybody, but you're dealing with lower level employees, and it's people show up one day and they leave the next. So I don't think of that as building a team really at all. You're just trying to keep people on phones, right?
Yeah.
But in our current company, and we have a phenomenal team. We actually just did a team field trip to Barrett-Jackson yesterday out here in Scottsdale. So we do fun stuff together. We have a team workout every Friday. People talk about culture. It's critical. But it starts with finding the right people, which I think is easier said than done. We have a very extensive interview process in our organization. We have a small team. We don't have a big team. It's currently 5 of us, and we'll grow to maybe 10 total. But I think there's a few components that go into it. Number one, don't be in a rush. My number one rule is don't be in a rush. Do it right. Don't do it fast. So we take time when hiring, and not only do we go through an extensive 3 to 4 interview process. Starts with a Zoom call. Then if you miss that, you come into the office. You meet with Dana and myself. Then if you go through that and it seems like you're going to be a good fit, you meet with the rest of the team, kind of do a mini interview with each of them. We got to make sure you're a good fit because we have a fun office. So, and then you come and you do, now we've extended it to a full week, working week in the office, which is paid, of course, but we're trying to make sure you like it here and you're not, and that we all play nice together in the sandbox. And you don't really know that. People can interview great, but you don't really know that until you work together for a little bit and get to know each other.
So you basically make them like a 1099 contractor for a week?
Yeah, we do.
I've never heard of something. That's a clever idea.
And then then after that, we do a 90-day probationary period, which we don't call it a probationary period. We really like you at this point, or you wouldn't even be getting here.
Right.
So we think you're going to be a great fit. We hope you work out, but let's get to know each other over 3 months, and we do that. And then they're W-2 at that point.
Got it.
And then once they hit the 90-day mark, we do a full evaluation. And if they make it, which we certainly hope they do, we've taken a lot of time and resources to get you here, and so have you. Then full benefits and now you're full, right? You're a full-time employee and so forth. So, but it's really that, and it's not only that, but it goes deeper than that. That's easy. In my world and in my work world, we have, and I say this from the very first interview in person, we have a feedback loop that is, I'll use the word like reciprocal. Like I want feedback from you on how I'm doing as a leader and how I can improve every single day, just as I'm going to give you feedback on how you can improve. And nobody's going to feel bad about it, right? Because if we don't know, how can we improve? And I don't expect you to make stuff up. I'm not going to make stuff up about you just to say something. I hope to God there's nothing and you're firing on all cylinders. But if there's room for improvement, we should be able to tell each other about it. So we have this rule in our office that there's a constant feedback loop. We also do monthly one-on-ones, which I think is critical because I want to know how you're feeling in your position. I want to update on your goals and what we're doing to help get you to your goals. I want to stay really in tune with the people that work on our team and work for us. Because the last thing I ever want to do is have somebody amazing that we just love and not know there was something wrong and they started looking somewhere else and we lose them, right? I think when you're lucky enough to find the right butt for that right seat and you want them with you forever, for 10 years, 20 years, however long you can have them, you want to be really in tune with them. And I think so many people just kind of forget about people in their organization. It's easy for us because we're small. You can't do that if you've got 500 people on your staff, but maybe Elon Musk can. But
well, tell me the best piece of feedback, the most useful piece of feedback you got from someone junior in your organization that gave you actual constructive criticism.
Yeah. I've been given advice on our meetings. We do a weekly meeting, and it's all hands on deck. We run on EOS. So
I love EOS.
So we run on EOS, kind of the traction system and so forth. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from team members on that, on how we can optimize. But one of the things is like when we get into our IDS, which is where you're helping each other solve issues within the organization. Instead of me going first, and I think Jeff Bezos does the same thing, I've heard. Instead of me going first, I let everybody else go first, and I listen, and then I go last. And I didn't always do that. I would, of course, go first as kind of the head of the table and the leader, and I'm supposed to be the one solving problems. And somebody mentioned it to me about a year ago, and they said, no, you should actually do it this way. I'd never even heard of it. So that was one thing that I think had the most impact, and it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Because if I say something,
Yeah.
or a leader in any organization, then they're not going to want to beef with the boss, right? And I don't even think like that, but people are reluctant. They just want to like, yes, man, yes, sir, whatever. And no. We need feedback and honest feedback and ideas coming out of our employees, right?
No matter how hard you try to be approachable and say you have an open door, when you're the CEO or the president, like you could say it till you're blue in the face. There are people that are just going to be intimidated no matter what you say and no matter how you say it.
Yeah.
And you can lose sight of that, and I have to remind myself of that too. So the professional stuff's fantastic. I really like the EOS stuff too.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You're obviously a fit guy as well, and sounds like you've got a great second marriage. And one of the things that's really interesting to me is the people I know personally that are most financially successful, and the people that you see, whether it's a Alex Hormozy or a Jordan Peterson or a Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
These are people that don't have or Patrick Bet-David. These are people that I don't think have a particularly balanced life. They think, it's the grind. 70 hours. If 70 hours is good, 85 hours is better.
Sure.
And many of them are not particularly well-rounded. Some of them aren't great parents, some of them aren't great partners, whatever it might be, or their health, might not be great or whatever. How do you think about those things and being a holistic leader, partner, father, versus just going after the dollar?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here for me anyways. I have always been into health and fitness since I was a little kid. My uncle, who unfortunately he was never the healthiest guy. He had drug and alcohol addiction and so forth growing up, but he was the only guy in my family that worked out. And so he always had the muscles and stuff like that. And just so as a little kid, I'm like, I want to be like Uncle Paul when I grow up, right? Because he just had the biceps and stuff. But as you get a little older, you understand like there's a lot more than just biceps, right? It's health and it's your mindset and it's all that. So fitness has always been important to me. And in building business has always been important to me. And you balance it with a few things, right? It's business, health, relationships, family, faith, all those things. And you can start to go down one path, which a lot of guys and gals do, where they're just so focused on making this business thing work that they lose sight of taking care of themselves. They lose sight of date night with their wife. They lose sight of, showing up for your daughter's, program that she's doing on stage that she practiced the last 3 months for, right, in school. And for me, I really do think that I've done a pretty good job of balancing that. It hasn't been perfect, but I would encourage people out there to understand that no matter how successful you are, no matter how much money you make, no matter how you build this business to be whatever you want it to be, you are not going to be happy and fulfilled if you get a giant beer belly in the process and you're completely out of shape and you have zero energy and your daughter's going, Daddy, where are you? And your wife is pissed off and maybe telling her friends what a shitty husband you are because you're never home, or worse, right? And so you have to look at a holistic approach. And for me personally, I've always done it, but I've gotten a lot better at it in the last couple of years. I'm 47 now. Since I turned 40, I started getting really serious about designing kind of my holistic approach to life. And it's on my phone every morning. I meditate and then I review my goals. It's the next thing that I do. I just keep them on my notepad on my phone and I'm updating them and I'm whatever. And those goals consist of personal, health, family, business, faith, and then things that I want to accomplish in life, right? Things that I want to do or achieve or whatever. And I think if you keep a real clear scope on what those are, you're going to quickly find it's not one thing.
Right.
It's just not. And so I've been taking it even further. I listen to, everybody probably knows who Rob Dyrdek is from.
I don't actually.
Okay, so Rob Dyrdek has done a bunch of shows on MTV. Yeah, you can turn on MTV and there's probably reruns of ridiculousness going on. He's known as being a funny guy and all this stuff, but he's one of the smartest businessmen and well-rounded family men that on the planet, I think. And he has a podcast called Build with Rob, and I started listening to that about 2 years ago. And he talks a lot about this, and he's actually built a data tracking to track all of these things and then rate himself on a daily basis, monthly basis, yearly basis, so he can continue to get better and better and better. And then what he does in each of these systems, family, faith, health, business, relationship, all these things, he is constantly evolving and optimizing and automating, right? So, and then automating for redundancies, because you never know when your kid's going to get sick or something's going to happen that throws you off kilter. But yeah, it's critical. And I would definitely encourage anybody that doesn't have a well-rounded plan on all aspects of your life to take a step back and look at it before it gets too late.
And what's that podcast called?
It's called Build with Rob.
I want to check that out.
You will start at episode 1 and roll all the way through. It's done now. He finished it like a year ago, but he did about 125 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so first marriage, 1 kid. Second marriage, 1 kid. Going to put words in your mouth. Maybe the second one's working out a little better than the first one. But what did you learn, and how do you think about relationships? Because romantic relationships in particular. Because one of the other things I've observed is the most successful people. Not always, but the vast, vast majority of them, their personal lives, especially their romantic personal lives, tend to be a huge blind spot for them.
Yeah.
Men in particular.
Mine was in my first marriage. Yeah, I was horrible. I did all the wrong things. I mean, I'm a good human. I love people and I care about people, but I was a punk kid. I say kid, I was in my mid-20s, early 30s, but to me now that's a kid.
Yeah.
I was just I didn't do all the right things, and I didn't treat her the way that she deserved to be treated, and she reciprocated, and so we did a lot of this butting heads, and I'm grateful I had my son out of it, and I'm grateful and wouldn't change anything that happened during that marriage, because I learned so much. And then I went on after that marriage, and I had another relationship, not married at all, not even engaged, but another decent 6-year relationship that I learned a lot more from. And I knew once I came out of that, so that's 16 years, right? I knew once I came out of that, now I'm an adult. Now I'm a man. Now I'm like, I know a lot more. I'm much more mature. And I had known what not only I want for myself and what are non-negotiables in the person I was going to share the rest of my life with and my true partner, but what was non-negotiables on how I would treat them and how I would show up for them. And I get chills talking about it. Like, I wrote this list out before I even knew Dana existed. I wrote this list out, and it had all these things that were non-negotiables, and they weren't the surface level BS that you would think. These were like real. Like, I want a real partner. Like, I want another entrepreneur to share my life with. I want somebody that is extremely into health and fitness, even more than me, that can help educate me and take my health and fitness further. Like, I want somebody that's a good mom, like those things. And then the way that I would show up and treat them, because I just wasn't ready prior, right? It took me that time to get ready and so all of those things were just the same for me. And it's an interesting story, like how we met. I was, I'm old school like you. There was no online dating or any of that crap. There was none of these like app things. When I was like, you show up at the bar and you hope to find the prettiest one.
There were personal ads in the newspaper.
Right, exactly. Right, exactly. Craigslist. No, I never did the Craigslist thing. Anyways, but I'm standing, my neighbor, I lived in this condo complex here in Scottsdale at the time, single, just me and my son. My neighbor is going out with a couple buddies to some like concert thing and invited me. And I was like, okay, cool. I got nothing else to do. Standing in his kitchen, getting ready to go. And him and his buddy, there were 3 guys there. They said, are you on Hinge yet? Because they knew I was single. I was, what's Hinge? I hadn't heard of Hinge. I'd heard of Tinder, but I hadn't heard of Hinge. Right. Oh man, you got it. And he's showing me his roster, right? He's like, oh, look at this. And I was like, Hinge. So I downloaded it on my phone. And I filled out the profile thing, standing in his kitchen, and I clicked submit, and it goes ding, literally like 2 seconds. It goes ding, and I was like, I got one. Literally, that's what I said. I go, I got one. And he's like, what? He goes, I've been trying for like 6 months. I don't got one. And it was Dana. It was my current wife.
The first one?
First one.
Wow.
Hit it off. Never went on a single date other than her, and we'll be married 3 years here next month.
Wow.
And have known each other over 5 years now, and it's crazy. It's like when I realized I was ready, when I realized that I had made all the mistakes, when I owned up to them. Because my ex-wife, I sat down with her and admitted everything that I did wrong. I like this. I did all these things wrong, and I wish I could change it, but I can't. But I'm going to at least fall on the sword and tell you, like, this is the jerk I was, and this is what I did, and so on and so forth. And I want nothing but the absolute best for you. But when I was ready, which took a lot of time and a lot of karma and a lot of healing coming back to me, it's like the universe just sent her to me. You know, when I had made a clear list on exactly what I wanted, and there was I said, I'll be single for the rest of my life if I can't find this. And I don't think this is out there.
Right.
Honest to God, I don't think this exists.
Right.
And God just sent her to me. And I get chills, man. I can't believe it.
Let's talk about your faith a little bit, because it's something that's back in Miami. I have 2 or 3 very close friends who are all quite religious. I was Jewish on my dad's side, Roman Catholic Italian on my mom's side. I would say I've always been somewhere between agnostic and an atheist, though I'm extremely spiritual.
Yeah.
And I'm envious of people that have found faith. So it's always a topic that's particularly interesting to me. In fact, the guy the podcasting studio that I use out of Miami, close friend of mine, very religious, and we do fellowship together, and he gives me Bible homework to do. And so I'm genuinely curious.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your faith, and how, were you always, did you always have faith, or is this something that came to you later in life?
Good question. I'm curious about my faith too. Honestly, I haven't always had faith. I haven't always believed in God. Growing up, my entire family on all sides were pretty religious, Christian, religious. And so I was drugged to church every Sunday, and I think Wednesdays as well, and would go. But as a little kid, they would cram you in this side room with all the other little kids,
right.
and I just I never liked it. I was like, Mom, when are we going home? Dad, when are we going? Like, I didn't want to be there. It wasn't exciting or fun to me. So it was kind of forced on me. And then when I was old enough to not have to go anymore, right, mid-teens or whatever, I completely was like, this thing, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. Like, honestly, I was
right.
like, that's whatever. You guys, I encourage anyone that has faith, and I love that this is what gets you through your day, mom, dad, family, whatever, and anybody else that has deep-rooted faith in God. That's awesome. Just ain't for me. And my mom would ask me all the time, like, why? But why? You can't this and that. And so for this massive span of my life, that's just how I thought. If I can't see it, it doesn't exist, whatever. I'm cruising here, doing my thing. And about 3-4 years ago, I started coming back around. I started getting around a lot of people that were very successful, not just in business, but in their relationships, in their, in their mindset, in everything. And all of them were really faith-based. And so I started opening up to it. And then also my wife, she grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, and is extremely educated on a ton of religion. Not just Catholic, but Judaism and Christianity and all these things. So she's educated me since I've known her. And I was like, and she's kind of been like, hey, we should get back and, go to church and start to get around some people. So I've not pushed it down my throat at all, but really just opened my mind. I think I am now ready for it, and have been ready for it now for a few years. And what really got me was she got me a book, Joe Dispenza book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. That's all about the universe and the universal mind and meditation and the science behind it and all these things. And I read that book cover to cover, and then went on to read his other books, and then went on to start meditating and understanding this whole universal mind and the powers that be. And for me, that is God, like all in one, right? And God is to you what God is to you. Like, our daughter loves the stories, and she reads her little Bible, right. and we, and it's great. But to me, it's both. It's kind of like, yes, is there this being in streets of gold and all these things up there, and when you die, you go to heaven or hell? Maybe. Right. I don't know. But what I do know is that with faith and with the power of the universe, and with like understanding and getting deep into like this spirituality that I have, my life has just gotten better. And the people around me have just gotten closer, and your circle gets warmer, right? And answers are coming to me that I didn't even question. I didn't even ask the question yet,
right?
Which is freaking cool. So I don't know what it is,
right?
To be honest, like, I don't know, but I know I want to know more, and I know it's something pulling me. It's something, and so I'm looking to learn more. I'm looking to get further into it, and wherever that takes me is where it takes me.
Well, it's funny. When I only got remarried about about a year and a half ago, I guess now, and we were honeymooning. She found this just really, really cute Airbnb in Hamilton, Montana, of all places, like 3 hours from anything.
Yeah.
And although just down the road from where they filmed Yellowstone, it turned out. But anyway, we became friendly with the Airbnb hosts who were quite religious. They had the house and they had built this. They called it the bougie barn. They had made this. This guy was amazing. I mean, I can barely put IKEA furniture together.
Yeah.
This guy built an entire frickin', barn with like unbelievable in like 3 months. Anyway, we became really good friends and they go to church. I said, would you mind if we tagged along and went to church with you? And they're like, sure.
Yeah.
They were like really thrilled. Anyway, I liked the pastor and we were there for a month. And when my daughter and her boyfriend had come to visit us and stay with us in the bougie barn. And it was the last Sunday before we were leaving, and they were baptizing people.
Yeah.
So I got baptized. And my daughter's like shaking her head. She's like, Podge, seriously? Like, how'd you go from agnostic to getting baptized?
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, you know what? You got to keep an open mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about open-mindedness and blind spots, because blind spots is something that I'm sort of always hyper-focused on myself, because I see people that are what I would consider intellectual heroes of mine, but they have blind spots you could drive a truck through.
Sure.
Where I think, oftentimes it's connected to ego, where when you're emotionally invested in being right, you stop taking in new information, and it's sort of hard to be open. Let me talk a little bit about blind spots and how, because you seem a lot like me, like you probably don't have a lot.
So good, though. Such a good topic. And that, again, I think it takes maturity. I am just now, I believe, getting better at this. And, I'll give a couple of examples. And you've heard it many times. I definitely didn't make this up, but you're so far in the forest, you can't see through the trees, right? And I think that we all get so on our grind in our lives, what's important to us and what we're dealing with every day, and the hurdles that come up that we got to jump over and create solutions around, and all the things, family, faith, business, relationships, all, health, that we just get so tunnel vision. And especially if we're working on something that, like a big project or something like that. And I'm very, very, I've always made a lot of unilateral decisions in my businesses, because I've always kind of been the boss, the visionary, the this, the that. And I don't even call myself a boss or think like that, but it just is, right? Somebody's got to steer the ship. And so I've always just kind of been like, boom, boom, boom. And I'm like a get it done now guy. Since I've been remarried, and since I am so blessed to have my wife as not only my partner in our company, my integrator, the COO of our company, but also somebody that is just my true partner in life, it's such a secret weapon, because she thinks very differently than I do. And she'll hear me like go down a path or start to march down a path, and I'm using the business example, but it happens in life and stuff too. And she'll say something that I would normally just completely disagree with. And she'll be like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should think about it this way. And I would normally be like, yeah, right. But if I take some time to think about it and hear her out, more than 50% of the time, she brings a new perspective that I never even thought of, and we end up doing what she suggested. Where if it were just me, the blind spot, as you say, just going,
right,
I would have just made the wrong decision. And then you get down the road and you're like, oh crap, like I made the wrong decision, and time, money, resources, whatever it may be, bonked in the head. So it really saves you. And so I have her, which is very fortunate. Not everybody has that. But I would highly encourage you to find somebody that you trust that maybe thinks a little differently than you do, that you're close to, that can give you real valuable advice. They're not always going to be right. You're not always going to agree with them. You're not always going to do what they suggest. But fill in those blind spots, because I know for a fact, I don't know. I say it all the time. I don't know much of anything, let alone everything.
Right.
So
that's great advice. Honestly, great advice. It's because I've said this frequently, which is, even if you're as brilliant as Elon Musk, you're still wrong 30% of the time, and that's if you're freaking brilliant.
Yeah.
You're not that brilliant, probably. And so, how can you be so sure this isn't part of that percent where you're wrong?
Right.
And it's kind of amazing how, even though you've been wrong so many times in your life, you're so sure you're right now.
Right? It is crazy how we
With
think
overwhelming evidence to the contrary, right?
Totally.
So, it's funny. I wouldn't say all, but I would say the majority of the very small handful of romantic relationships I know that are successful, the husband and wife are actually business partners.
Really?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
You two, I have a Argentine couple back in Miami I'm really close with that they also work together. Hispanic couple, one's Venezuelan, one's Argentine. Colombian. They're same kind of thing, and they're business partners together as well. And those are among the healthiest relationships that I've seen, and there aren't that many, quite frankly, that I've seen. Mine's very different in that, though there is a similarity, I chose to. My wife's a good bit younger than me, and I chose to retire her. I'm like, I just want you to be a force multiplier for me.
Yeah.
But she's very her two best qualities besides being attractive is that she's very open-minded and she's very intelligent. And I work for a virtual company, so I work from home. Mm-hmm. She hears my half of most of my conversations. And she's smart, and she knows what businesses I'm in. Mm-hmm. And she does it all the time. She'll say, Dave, I heard you saying this, and have you thought about that? Thinking about it this way, and she'll bring something up, and she doesn't have like some strong business background or anything like that, but she has a different perspective, and she understands people. Mm-hmm. And a good percentage of the time, I'll shift something in my solution anytime she ever pipes in.
Yeah. Well, you're open to it. Right?
Totally.
And I think that's the key right there, is being open to it. And then once you see that it actually had an impact, a positive impact on what you're doing, now you're more open to it, right?
Yeah.
And you can start. So, I mean, at first, even it took work, because I'm very fortunate in that she ran her own company for 10 years by herself as a solopreneur before we had ever met. So she was already extremely intelligent, running a business and doing all those things. She had that business mindset. But I was doing the same for probably 20 years or north of 20 years. But I knew that we worked really well together, and I would hear her on the phone with her clients, and she'd hear me on the phone with my clients, because we worked at home office, desk facing each other.
Right.
But it took a while to get that, because when we decided to kind of bring everything together and work together and build the new company together, we did the visionary integrator thing, right? EOS. I'm the visionary, she's the integrator. And very, very difference of opinion. And I was always, in the very beginning, just reluctant to be open to like maneuvering curbing my situation, how I wanted to get something done. But as I opened my mind to it, which was pretty early on, and as I started to see, oh my gosh, like she knows way more than I do. What the hell am I doing here?
Right.
And it just started to pay dividends. I was like, that's great. And also, it's not just business, it's people, right? We're in the people business for sure, in the relationship business. And her gut instinct, she's amazing. Like I'm just happy-go-lucky. I'm, shaking hands and smiling and having conversation, and she's gut check instantly. She could tell me, we leave a meeting or we leave a dinner or we leave something, and she's like, something off about that person. And every time she's right. And I would have never caught it.
Right.
Ever caught it. She's saved us a tremendous amount of time. So I think it's cool. And blind spots they can cost you a lot.
Yeah. My daughter is also another great, because she is brutal with me, absolutely brutal. But and she's definitely right some of the times.
Yeah.
And that has utility, and I have pretty thick skin.
Yeah.
So having having two kids, if you really were to think about what are the three, actually, one question: having a boy and a girl. Maybe I'll get canceled for saying this, but I know if I had a son, I only have a daughter, but if I had a son, there's no doubt in my mind I would parent them very differently. Mm-hmm. I would focus on different things. I'm curious if you parent them in any ways differently, and how you think about what the sort of the main tools are that you try to make sure that they have in their toolkit to help them be happy and successful in life.
Yeah, a couple of good questions. Other than because of their age, I don't think it's literally... at least not yet, right? Maybe as our daughter gets a little older, it will be parenting differently because she's a girl and he's a boy. And I could totally see that. And we talk about it, right? Like come to the door with a shotgun when the boyfriend shows up, all the funny things that us dads say about our daughters, but where you wouldn't do that with your son.
Right.
But I think more the parenting them differently right now, at least, is because he's 15 and she's 7.
Yeah.
So it's just a very different dynamic. Her imagination is running wild, and she thinks she's Taylor Swift, and she's, where he's like, he's really into golf, and he's starting to get into like business and how do I earn money, and I'm going to get my driver. So it's different there. So we don't really parent them differently other than that. Now, the things that we instill in them, we pay very close attention to. we show them, we pay very close attention to. And for us, it starts first and foremost with keeping a very calm household. Our household, like I told you in the beginning of the show, we never an argument. We do not have disagreements. Do we disagree on things? Of course. But we don't argue in front of the kids about disagreements. We don't raise our voices. We keep a very calm, steady household, which I think is important. I didn't have that growing up. My wife didn't have that growing up. It was chaos in our houses. So we know what we don't want our kids to grow up seeing, right? And then also, especially common sense is a massive one in our house. Like, think before you say things. Think before you do things. Have manners. Say please and thank you. Hold doors open for people, right? Be kind and courteous. Look people in the eye. Shake their hands, right? It's not difficult, but I just feel like if you go out into the world, you don't see enough of it, especially with teenage kids and young. They just don't. And they're emulating what they learn in the household. I've had literally old ladies come up to me in the grocery store and say, "Is this your son?" And I'm over getting bananas. And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "He is the most polite little gentleman I ever." And I'm like, "Thank you." He should be, right? It's the simple things. And then now that my son's getting into, a little older where he's starting to think, how do I make money? I got to fill the gas tank and I'm going to be moving out in a few years. It's business too. It's showing them what mom and dad do and that life doesn't give you anything. And putting this food on the table and the roof over your head and, the electric bill, that stuff isn't free. And you're not going to get anything for free either. You got to work for it. So showing them that work ethic and that we show up every single day and that the job's not done when the clock hits 5. The job's done when the job's done. And like having that narrative in our household. And they each have an office in our office. Our daughter,
really?
at 6 years old, had an office in our office. Yeah, she's head of HR. She'll fire your ass if you get out of line. Yeah.
Like Trump, you're fired.
Yeah. And then fitness too, right? They see us, my son works out with me and they see us in the gym and taking care of ourselves and eating healthy food. So I think it's everything.
Yeah.
I think for us, it's like we want them to, they don't have to emulate us exactly, right? They don't need to be robots, but at least take the values that we have learned over 40 years of life plus and take from that what fits your life best and go do it,
I've been genuinely surprised because of how much my daughter busts my balls, how much she's emulated me, which I would have never in a million years thought of because she gave me such a hard time about many of the things that she now emulates. I'll tell you the thing I struggle with the most, and I'm curious how you think about it. I think the hardest thing, especially if you're reasonably financially successful and you can provide a good life to your children, how do you deal with allowing them to experience some level of suffering? Because as a parent, you want them to experience no suffering at one level, but that's terrible. Like if you don't have hardship, then you don't develop. It's really hard to develop character, So how do you navigate that?
That is tough. We
especially with a daughter, I would say myself
we struggle with that, and her and I have open conversation about it. Like she's more hyper aware of it than I am, but that is tough. So I haven't figured it out yet. However, not necessarily struggle, but the fact that they do have other parents that live a different life than us, they live in a different type of a home, they have different relationships. They have a different way of talking to people. They have a different structure. And I'm not going to say anything negative that could get out there, but it's different, right? And to each their own. They at least get to see that. And so not that that's bad. I think that's a good thing that they get to kind of see both and they get to see how mom and dad live over here. And then they get to see how mom or dad live over here. And they get to choose.
Yeah.
Right? They get to choose what they pick up. Do they want to have manners or do they want to have no manners? Right? Do they want to get up and go to work every day and bust their butts and build a team and do really well financially? Or are they okay working for someone else? Neither is wrong.
Right.
But they get to see both sides. So it kind of works for us. So I wouldn't say suffering, but getting to see both sides of how, the rich dad, poor dad thing.
Yeah.
Right? Robert Kiyosaki nailed it.
Yep.
With that. You get to see both sides. I think there's extreme value in that.
What about sports? Do they play? Because sports is another way. Like I was a wrestler.
Yeah.
All the way through college. And
we are twins. I was a wrestler too.
We're here.
Yeah.
All the way through college, and there's a lot of suffering in wrestling.
Oh yeah.
For sure. And so maybe sports or some kind of martial art or.
Yeah. So our daughter, she has done dance and she's done some golf, and she's done some different sports. She's really, really, and first and foremost, with our kids, we want them to explore everything they want to explore, but I don't want to jam anything down their throats.
Yeah.
And so we're very open about this. I will support you in anything you want to do as long as it's healthy. You test it out, see if you like it or not. If you love it, great, we'll do more of it. If you don't love it, let's go try something else. So our daughter tried, golf and dance and a couple different things, gymnastics and all the things that little girls do. And she didn't hate it, but she didn't catch on with it. She is really into singing. So we got her a singing coach. She goes to singing coach every Thursday, and she has her song, and it's very regimented. She has her song, she hits her notes, she has her little piano, and she truly believes she's Taylor Swift. And we encourage her. Like, it's amazing. So she wants to sing in the car, and she wants, Daddy, can I sing you this? And of course, come on. With my son, he's interesting because, I'm not a big guy, and he's not a big guy, although he's about damn taller than me now already.
Right.
But, we're skinnier, shorter guys. And so he did the football, and he did soccer for a couple of years, and he liked them. But he's like, Dad, I don't like doing stuff that I'm going to get hurt in. I said, hallelujah. I don't want you getting hurt either. I saw him almost get kicked in the face a few times. So he did those for 3-4 years. He did those sports and, had fun. But he's gotten really into golf. And it's just the same thing. Like now he found the thing that he is really into, and the kid's in the golf simulator 3 times a day. He's on the course at the driving range playing rounds every chance he gets. He made his own little YouTube channel. He's editing videos of him golfing and doing things, so he's instructing other people. And it's really interesting to me that when if you don't force them,
Right.
at least this is my experience, if you force them, I think they'll either do it out of force and learn to love it, or they'll just push away. If you don't force them, which is what we didn't do, but you let them try and encourage them to do everything, and then when they find what it is that they love, they'll force themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen. I mean, they're both young so far, but we'll see where it goes.
Oh.
Yeah. So singing and golf in our house.
There you go.
Yeah. Neither of them are going to get hurt too bad.
Yeah. He wasn't interested in wrestling, huh?
No. It's interesting. I didn't wrestle long like you did. But the couple years I did wrestle, and it was more like junior high school for me. So I was young, but best workout I ever had in my life. I mean, they torture you, man. And so that's what attracted me to wrestling. Yeah. It was really, really cool. But no, he never got into that.
Yeah. It was funny. It's the only thing that my dad, I had an older brother that was literally grounded till he was 100. So I was the other kid. I just never got in trouble. The only time my dad ever told me I had no choice, because I wanted to play basketball, but I was literally like 3 feet tall.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, come on. So he made me go out for the wrestling team.
Wow.
When I was in 7th grade. So he did the force. I mean, he literally said, you don't have any choice. He goes, you can quit after 2 weeks, so you have to go for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I won a wrestle off. I guess all the beatings from my older brother, something sunk in. And I beat the kid in the wrestle off. And he was kind of a bully, too. He was kind of a jerk. And he, quit the team. And I was like, oh, this is great. Awesome. And it was funny. What I liked about wrestling was every year, there'd always be at least one bully who'd come out from the team, and they'd never last. Because, no matter how good you are, someone's eventually going to hand you your head.
Oh, yeah.
And how do you take the L? And do you learn from it? Do you make excuses? And it's a very interesting sport. If I did have a son, I have to admit I would force my son to wrestle for a brief period of time to at least try it.
Yeah.
But with my daughter, because she's the other gender, I took the approach you and your wife are taking, and I just whatever she wanted to try, I would get behind. She did Irish dance. Really glad she got out of that. It was a little creepy, if I'm being honest. But yeah, whatever she wanted to try, and she actually, it's funny because this she didn't get from me, does not have a competitive bone in her body.
Okay.
She was in a very competitive field hockey team, and for her, it was about if she had a coach she liked, she would play really well so she wouldn't disappoint her coach.
Yeah.
But she didn't care about winning.
Okay.
It was just about not disappointing an authority figure.
That's James. Not a competitive bone in his body.
Right.
Our daughter will slit your throat all the way through. I tell you, man, she is the boss, and she will tell you exactly how it's going to be and literally cut you.
Man, putting her in charge of HR could be dangerous.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, so where can people find you? Where can people find what you're doing?
Yeah.
And find out more about it?
Yeah. So if you're interested in investing in multifamily real estate, that's what we do. We help people build passive income through multifamily real estate investing. That's elevestcapital.com. You can find me there. You can get on a call with me. I'd love to talk to you about your business journey and your investing journey. As far as socials, at AW Invests on all the socials. That's really it.
This has been a really great conversation, and hopefully we'll get to have another one soon.
I certainly hope so. Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate it.